let me tell you my story first. I was born in Kuwait of Egyptian parents, and I was raised when I was like 18 months old. My father was sent to England to study at Cambridge University. So for 5 years, I lived in Cambridge and London, where he was a student. At the age of 6, my father was transferred to Malaysia. I grew up 10 years in Malaysia. And then after spending 11 months, after finishing high school, my father was sent to New York. I came to New York, and I've been in the United States since December the 22nd of 1965. So I've lived here longer than almost all of you, with the exception of Gil and maybe a couple of gentlemen I see in the United States of America. I'm a naturalized United States citizen, as well as an Egyptian citizen. And I have devoted my work over the last 10 years, since 9/11 especially, to addressing the challenge that was raised or that was put before us after 9/11, which is how do you bridge or how do you heal U.S.-Muslim relations. Out of the effort to contemplate how to do it, I founded the Cordoba Initiative, which was a blueprint on how to do so, by analyzing the different causes that have contributed to what is perceived, in general terms, as the U.S.-Muslim conflict, and how to change the discourse about it. By identifying the various components, when we broke them down into the political, the social or social identity, the theological sources of the problem, and the perception causes the problem. And in perception, you have the role of the media, both the news media, entertainment media, on both sides in creating perceptions and very often misperceptions about these issues. Among the projects that I had formulated was the Cordoba House project, which is a project to establish a center, a community center, open to all, that paralleled the format of the YMCA, or the 92nd Street Y and Jewish community centers, which were based upon a recipe of programs that include athletic activities, cultural activities and art activities, educational activities, but as well as a focus on religion and establishing a culture of worship where Muslims would worship and other faith religions would worship as well. This was the vision that I had had for the last 15, 20 years, and also a place which would address the need of evolving what I have called in many of my talks an American Muslim identity. Because when you look at when you study the sociology or the narrative of immigrant faith communities, they go through certain phases. An immigrant community immigrates to a new society, let's say America, and the immigrant generation has very strong attachments to the homeland. It wants to educate its next generation and keep them remembering the homeland in terms of language, religion, etc. The next generation, or the first generation, is often torn between the identity that their parents want them to be, whether it's Italians or Germans or Pakistanis or Egyptians, and the desire to be one of the guys or one of the gals, to be American. It takes typically 3 generations for the memory of the old homeland to recede and a more coherent sense of who we are as a people. And this story has happened to all the faith traditions which have immigrated to the United States. The Jewish faith tradition, the Catholic faith tradition, there are certain things that they've all gone through. And to address that issue, and to discuss this issue, and to evolve and to seed a coherent framework for evolving what I've called an American Islamic identity, was also among the purposes of establishing this Cordoba House vision. I have been imam of a mosque about 12 blocks from Ground Zero for for the last 27 years. I've been a member of that neighborhood. And when we started, it's a small storefront kind of a place, but the interior was very well decorated and a very deeply spiritual space. When we first started, the place was half full. About 2 years ago, we were having 3 successive Friday prayers. The community had grown. The area of Lower Manhattan is primarily not as a residential neighborhood, although over the last 10, 15 years, there has been a gradual increasing residentialization, if I can coin that word with your permission, Gil. It might be bad English, but you know what, it's a convenient way of expressing something very concisely and quickly of the area, of the neighborhood. So there's been a gradual increase in the Muslim community that lives in that neighborhood, but a much larger increase in Muslims who pray the Friday prayers, because Friday is a work day, and who live in other parts of Manhattan or in New Jersey, on Long Island, and commute to their area of work. One of the congregants in my congregation felt the need for a larger space, we had the need for a larger space, but being a real estate person, felt a particular responsibility to find such a place, which he did. And we had this vision of putting together the idea of a Cordoba house, a Lower Manhattan community center. It was written about in public first time on December 9th of 2009. We've gotten a temporary permit to use 2 floors of the existing location for prayers, for Friday prayers. Not a blip was heard. And then in May of 2010, what I've learned is called a black swan event began to swirl around me, and we were found to be a convenient tool for a certain extreme right-wing component of the Republican Party to utilize for political currency during the midterm elections.